Hello, and a massive, big, warm welcome to this week's episode of the Soul Sync podcast. Now, how are you? I hope you're keeping well. I hope you are having a good spring so far. Now, this week's episode, I'll tell you what, I couldn't stop laughing at points. This guest really made me laugh. She had so much good humour, so much wisdom, and I really loved the conversation, as you'll probably be able to tell. So, let's get on with it. So this week on the Soul Sync, I had the privilege of hosting a true luminary in the field of spirituality and mediumship, Penny Hayward. Now, Penny is not just a teacher, mentor, inspirer, and medium. She really is a beacon of light, guiding others on their journey of self-discovery and empowerment. With a passion for inspiring and mentoring individuals to unlock their full potential, Penny's work resonates deeply with those seeking to unravel the layers of complexity within themselves and reveal their authentic truth and inner beauty. Penny was born in Australia and is now based in County Durham, UK. Penny's spiritual journey truly began to soar after relocating to England in 1999, and since then she has achieved remarkable milestones in her spiritual progression, including becoming a tutor at the prestigious Arthur Findlay College and being appointed as an officiant of the Spiritualists National Union. Penny also tutors all around the world. She has extensive qualifications and achievements that really do speak volumes about her dedication to spiritual progression and development. So join us as we delve into the profound insights and wisdom that Penny Hayward has to offer. You're going to love this one. Enjoy. So, Penny, I must say, I am so excited to have you on the Soul Sync podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Now, I know we're going to have an action-packed hour because we've got so much we could talk about. But I've just mentioned you in the intro. I've given people a bit of a flavour of Penny Hayward. But tell us a bit about you, your spiritual journey, any kind of standout moments that have happened over the years, so we can get to know you a bit better. What we love at the Soul Sync, I will say, Penny, is hearing about kind of pivotal moments in people's lives that kind of propelled their mediumship or spirituality.
Well, it's always hard to know where to start, because when you reflect back, you realize you've had so many extraordinary experiences in your life. And I have done a bit of reflecting lately. When I was a child, I used to talk to someone out the window. My dad used to catch me in the middle of the night. I never knew until he wrote birthday message when I turned 50, and he said he used to listen to me talking to someone as I gazed out at the stars. So obviously there was something there from a very young age, but to me it was normal, so I didn't really see myself as being any different to anybody else. I did have experiences of perhaps astral traveling and feeling like I'm flying, and having an awareness that there was someone else in the room, but I couldn't see them. I knew it was a man, and it always was at night. And, you know, as a child, you come up with these little games like, you know, you have to run and jump onto your bed, otherwise they're going to catch your ankles. And I wouldn't say that I was in like a deep fear, but I was just like, there's someone there. And so when you look back, you realize I obviously had a sensitivity to the spirit world, but I didn't know what it was. I also can remember looking in the mirror and seeing my face change and seeing someone else's face looking back at me. So that got me thinking, well, who am I? You know, and I always sort of looking out at the stars, I'd be wondering, like, what's life about? What's out there? I wish I was up in the stars, you know, all those sorts of things. So I guess I've been a natural philosopher, a natural inquirer of what's life about and where am I going and what does it all mean. So that got sort of accelerated into my 20s. I did have a near-death experience. and a pretty shocking accident that I was emphatically told by the police and emergency services I shouldn't have walked away from. And I did have quite a profound experience during that accident. And everything sort of culminated to a point when I heard a voice say I needed to move to England. And it came with this feeling of, and I've told this story quite a few times, so I don't want to bore everybody who's
Oh,
heard it before.
I've never heard it. We haven't heard it. We want to hear it all, Penny.
But it was at a time in my life when I was sort of like, what's life about? What am I here for? Oh, and I woke up one day with this sort of almost bolt up and this voice saying, move to England. And I didn't really question it. So, which was a miracle probably in itself. And then I remembered my grandmother was born here and I could apply for an ancestry visa. Never occurred to me to do it before, went through the process. It was pretty much when internet cafes were only just starting. So it was like hand filling in lots of forms and getting all the documents and things. And I got to the end of it all and it was, oh, it's going to take 6 months and you have to apply before you turn 28. And I panicked because, and I looked at the date and it was literally 6 months before my 28th birthday.
Wow.
By the time I finished filling in these forms. So you think about the timing of all of that and that sort of like move to England. And it wasn't like an angry thing or anything. It was just like, yeah, I better.
What the fact that you had that, what did you think that voice was? Did you have any?
No, I couldn't. It came with this feeling of almost like being moved or compelled to act, but not in a unsettling way, just in a don't question it kind of way. I don't know how to really explain it, but I did, is all I can say. And when you look at how the timing of that and that it never occurred to me before, even though I knew my cousin had done it. So anyway, I sort of thought, oh, probably won't get it. And 3 days before my birthday, everything comes back. There's the visa in my passport and the document that said you better get here within 6 months, otherwise it's null and void. So so I kind of gave away everything and packed up my life into a suitcase.
Wow.
Got on an aeroplane and stopped off in Bali on the way, as you do.
Of course, why not?
and because there was this no guarantee that I would get through customs, so I booked an onward journey to Italy, just in case I didn't get let through. They didn't stamp my passport and I had to come back with my tail between my legs. I thought I might as well have fun in Europe. So I went on to Italy for a few weeks and pretty much was running out of money and had to come back to reality and get a job and all those sorts of things. And I was standing on London Bridge looking at Tower Bridge thinking, I'm here now, what? It was just kind of, the whole goal was to get to England. But the synchronicity after that was where I finally did get a job, which was Cafe Royal in Piccadilly Circus, London. I met some people and I made some friends, and one of those friends went to a medium and she was going to go back and her mum was going to go with her the second time but couldn't go. So she asked, would I step in at the last minute? So I said, yeah, I want to go. And I'd had a pretty difficult experience. I had a need to hear from the spirit world and I had something pretty specific I wanted to know. And I was talking to my grandparents in the car while I was waiting. And the medium brought through, my grandmother brought through the information I needed to know pretty early on. So it was pretty impactful. And then I had this sort of voice almost telling me to go back to the medium. And I didn't really know why. So I eventually acted, and I did go back, and then it wasn't working the second time, and I wasn't sort of judging or anything. The first time was so profound. I didn't even know why I was there, really, to be honest with you. And she said, "Oh, you're not here for an evidential reading, are you?" And I said, "Well, I don't know why I'm here. I just want to know how it works." And the words just came out. So I really feel like the spirit world was sort of almost getting the words out for me, and that's what started my journey, really. So I started going to her workshops, and really I was going because I wanted to understand myself. It wasn't to become a medium, or I mean, to be honest with you, I was so stubborn. It took me 5 years to admit to myself I am a medium.
Well, that makes me feel a bit better, Penny, because I think it's taken me a very long time, and I still doubt it. So,
Yeah,
so you was how old then when you had this experience with this medium, where you suddenly thought, right, okay, I'm gonna start, going on this
yeah.
journey.
Look, I would say I was maybe 32. So it sort of started slow. I was like dipping my toe in. She ran workshops once a month type thing. So I was adamant I was only going to go to her workshops. That's all I needed, all I wanted. And then, something like sort of built up, and I'd sort of start looking at all the other things on the notice board, and I went outside that comfort zone. I started going to other workshops, and the next thing I knew, I was doing 2 development groups a week. um, I was going to a home circle every week, and I was going to weekend workshops pretty much every other weekend. And then I started going to the college, the Arthur Findlay College, and pretty much anywhere I could go and learn something. So I was working full time, but somehow I don't know, I just don't know how I did it all, but I did. Um, and I can remember feeling like the odd one out at first, because everybody would be like, "Oh, I've been developing for all these years, and I just want to help people, and I just want to be a medium." And it would get to me, and I'd be like, "I'm just here for me," you know. And I really was. I just, things as I, you know what it's like when you develop your mediumship. It's you practice on each other, and people pick up things about your life experience, or bring through evidence, or whatever it might be, and it unpacks something in your life that you thought you dealt with and hadn't, or that you'd forgotten about, and then you've got this emotional work to do on yourself, and you know what that's like, right? And
Well, I do, because even myself, when I been in my experiences of going to that college, people sometimes will say something in passing, and there is nothing like being surrounded by 20, 30 mediums. They'll
mm,
say something and it will just really hit you at
mm,
times, and they don't realize the impact they've had. And then you go back to the room thinking, did they see that in me? Did they read that? Or,
yeah,
how's that happen? And it's made me realize, the last time I went to the college, I really struggled, because it suddenly brought out
mm,
a whole load of stuff that I thought I'd dealt with, which I
mm,
hadn't. So I feel, just to make people feel better, I'll give the story very briefly. I'm in a relationship, but then I realized that I still had loads of trauma from past relationships, and then I just couldn't clear
right,
my mind. So
mm,
I can relate to you there.
yeah,
So you go on this, absolutely throw yourself in on the deep end route, which I love, because that's the way I've done it. I can sympathize when you said you were working full time.
mm,
And how did it kind of go? How did it kind of build from there over the years? Because
mm.
where you are now is just incredible. Teaching all over the
Oh,
world,
yeah,
tutoring, your schedule, I can't imagine how busy it is. Tell us about some
yeah,
pinnacle moments over the course of from where you left
yeah.
off to where you are now.
I would say that I never saw myself where I am today. If you asked me 20 years ago, or said well, people did pretty much say to me, you're going to go on and do these things, and I was like, no. And something I noticed is if the spirit world want you to be somewhere, they pretty much keep nudging you until they get you there. And there's been some pretty defining moments along my journey where I certainly was on the brink of giving up, walking away, going through some pretty difficult times, uh, and I test the spirit world, because I wasn't putting myself in. Yes, I went through the motions to be where I am. I had to, but for example, I would put the spirit world to the test and sort of say, well, if you lot expect me to be there or do that, I mean, even in working in the churches, I was adamant I wasn't going to be a platform medium. No way. Like, and I kept getting told I'd work on the platform, and I'm like, listen, if you lot really think I'm going to do that, make it happen. And I got a phone call from a spiritualist church 3 days later asking for me to do the platform. And I'm like, okay. And it just kept going from there. And then in terms of teaching, I was reluctant at admitting I was a medium anyway. I told you that 5 years it took me to go, okay, I must be a medium. And look, and then I'd sort of go through these phases where everybody would come up to me and say, you'll be teaching. And it was like every reading I had, everything I did, every practice, it would be like, you're going to be teaching. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. And so then it was like, okay, well, if this is meant to happen, it's going to happen without me making it happen. I'll go through some motions, and then I'd get opportunities and so on and so forth. So I'd say to you, Jason, to be honest with you, I would put it to the test. I've got an inner skeptic in me, not like full blown, but just a little sort of healthy skeptic inside me that sort of says, okay, well, if that's true, then spirit will prove it to me, bring me something that's going to make me believe that's what I'm meant to do, or that I make that decision, because I don't want to come from an ego-based sense, if you see where I'm coming from. And yeah, I think when it came to working in some of the international organizations, it's as though there've been times where there's been blockages or the gates closed, and then I think, okay, well, it's not meant to be. It's I'll just carry on doing what I'm doing, and then it's like the gate opens and a flow happens. So despite any challenges, I've always been of the philosophy, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. So I've never really forced it. And there's certainly, those, you can see that metaphor as gate closed or door slamming in your face, whatever you want to call it, as obstructions from outer forces. And I've just trusted, well, if it's meant to be, the door will open. And it has. So I think as well, it's a really interesting time at the moment, because there's all these opportunities that are coming up. And for example, another example is, quite a few years ago, I was putting the thought out. I'm really big into manifesting an intention.
Oh, I am as well. Do you know what? We'll come on to that in a moment,
Yeah.
actually, because yeah, carry on.
Yeah. So one of them was, I would love to work with scientists and researchers. I'd love to be put to the test, like, wire me up, because I read a lot of books, and I still read a lot of books, and how the sort of our pioneers were put to the test. I mean, rigorously, beyond measure, really. And I sort of thought, well, if I'm a medium, then I'm willing to be tested. But and so there didn't seem to be that bridge really in science and spiritualism. It seemed like, you know, Hanan Swaffer and Maurice Barbanel and Arthur Findlay were sort of our last pioneers of you know, doing that research, bridging that gap between science and spiritualism, and putting things to the test. And so I thought I really want to be a part of that and see where that can go. So next thing I know, I started getting involved into and looking into consciousness, but I was also like, I had this feeling I had to understand quantum physics. So when I couldn't sleep at night, I'd listen to these like quantum physics lectures. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense as a medium, that would happen because, you know. So I was sort of thinking about it in terms from the medium looking towards the physics. And I'm like, quantum physics has to have something to do with how we communicate as mediums and through consciousness. So that amplified my sort of like, I want to work with scientists and researchers. And when I got asked to do some sessions for the Arthur Findlay College, there were, you know, part of it was like, do something different. So I thought, consciousness. And I brought in a physicist to give his perspective on quantum physics. And then of course I've got a science week, so where I bring in researchers, and I'm making more and more inroads into that, collaborating with researchers and sciencey type people. So it's been slow, but it's happening.
It sounds like you're getting all these dots that you're connecting up as well with. And it's kind of like that when you suddenly see something, you go, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there kind of been anything in the scientific quantum physics world that's kind of played into consciousness, or things that you've kind of learnings or things that you've come across by connecting dots, which were pretty profound for you throughout what you've been doing?
You know, consciousness is really hard to test and define, and anybody looking into the consciousness area, there's a pretty competitive attitude out there at the moment, with researchers and people who are interested in exploring consciousness. And how do you really measure that? You know, so we can do brainwave measures, but brainwaves, the human brain is just a computer system that processes physical and non-physical information. So as a medium, I would say to you, well, our consciousness is not of the brain. Our consciousness is a non-physical aspect of us, and it's our awareness through consciousness that allows us to be aware of the unseen world, so the spirit world, and or even psychic influences and energies and so forth. So it's through our non-physical self. So I talk about the fact that we are a soul, a spirit, and a consciousness or mind, you know, for want of better words, but I prefer consciousness. So those three elements, energetic elements of us, are as greater sum total than the physical, and the physical is only temporary. So those three non-physical aspects of us survive physical death. Wow, kaboom. So, you know, so there is a way to measure that there is a change in the brainwave activity. So that tells the scientists and the researchers something's happening that that is beyond that there's information being perceived by that individual that is beyond the physical dimension. Does that make sense? So
it does make sense, yes.
So they're getting closer and closer to understanding it. And my philosophy, in my own naive or not way, is that we are here and not here. So we are of the physical and the non-physical. So therefore, as mediums, we're able to move out of our physical state of being into our non-physical state of being, to be sort of, we're here but not here. if you see where I'm coming from. And that to me is that whole kind of, and maybe entanglement thing, but also really we, through our consciousness and quantum effect. So quantum is looking at how we can make an effect on the physical. So they have random generators, and so they do tests through random generators to see if there's an effect, that we can have effect through our consciousness, through our mind. So again, that's having a physical effect on something through our will, if you like, right? So that's coming at it from a more sciencey side of things rather than a mediumistic side of things, but it links to intention for me. So given we both are into intentions.
Oh, yeah, yes. Tell me, I've only just done on this podcast a 28-day challenge on the law of attraction, following a book called The Magic. So people are probably thinking, yes, I've got someone else to talk about it other than me. Tell us about intention then. What does that mean to you?
Well, it works in lots of different ways, and the best way to get a result is to be relatively specific, but not so specific that you're restricting or putting so many parameters around it the universe can't provide. So for example, and also we want to be clear in our language as well, because a lot of people go wrong because they make it like a wish list, like, well, I want the perfect man, and he's got to be so tall, and he's got to have so much money, all the, and it's like, no one's perfect, so you're wrong on that one.
Yes.
But it's also about looking at it from a not like trying not to be too in the human about it. And what I mean by that is, for example, or too ego-based. So I would say ego is of the human nature, right? So I've manifested things for myself I really couldn't believe possible, like owning my own property. And so the language I used was, I own my own home.
Like an affirmation as well.
Well, it's a play on words, isn't it? Right.
Mm.
So affirmation, intention, manifestation all pretty much mean the same thing. And but it is, I own my own home. Now, it doesn't say where it is. It doesn't say how big it is. It doesn't say what your neighbors are like. It doesn't say anything like that. But there came this weird quantum.
Yeah, anyone listening to this wondering why we're just bursting out laughing, it's because Penny's getting more theatrical and I'm loving it.
So there came this weird effect during lockdown. I'd lost all my work, as you can imagine, because physical places were closing and you couldn't travel and all this sort of stuff, and there was some personal things going on, so I was up all night talking to Australia because my mum was going through difficulties. Anyway, beside the point. So I didn't really work for 6 months and I didn't have an income, but there was this weird sort of set of circumstances, and the rent was going up in the property I was living in because people were moving out of London into the surrounding areas that were a commute distance away. So it drove the rent up, and I'm like, I can't afford to live here anymore. And so I was like, right, I sat myself down. I went, right, there has to be opportunity in this chaos. And so I decided to talk to a mortgage lender that dealt with people that were like me, self-employed, random income and all this. Anyway, as it transpired, he said, oh, Penny, I've got great news. I can get you a mortgage. I'm like, yay. And of course, at my age and on my measly income. And anyway, so I'm like, yay, what is it? Well, I mean, it wasn't, you couldn't have gotten a garage. You couldn't have gotten a garage for your car in London or in Greater London or well, anywhere south of Manchester. In fact, you probably couldn't have gotten a garage north of Manchester for that money. So I thought, right, I'm not tied to anyone or anything. So I just searched the whole length, breadth of the country, Wales, Scotland. I was just like, I have to find something. And I did. I found it in the northeast, as you said in the intro. I'm in County Durham. So and I just have some very interesting neighbours.
When you go to want to manifest something, is it just you? Because when I do it, I feel that I have to keep feeling myself with it, putting this out, for me, it's all about the feeling. It sounds to me like your process is much more simpler, straightforward, and very instant. When you want to manifest something, what do you actually do then? Is it just you say it and then that's it, done? Or
Well, sometimes it does. So for example, like I've got a PayPal account, for example, and so I might sort of need to transfer that money across to pay some bills out of my, you know, uh, bank account. And I'll think, oh, I could really do with a bit more of a top up in there. And it will be just like that. Oh, I could do with a top up in there. And within a couple of days, I'll just get a whole bunch of people maybe booking readings or whatever and selecting PayPal over any other type of thing. So sometimes it is kind of almost instantaneous. But with the house, what I didn't realize until I moved in and I opened up my purse because I hadn't used a wallet because it was in lockdown that this happened. And I hadn't used my purse for a long time because, of course, all we ever did was use our card and tap it everywhere we went. So
yeah.
I'd moved into this house, and I was looking through my purse and I saw this tiny little piece of paper stuffed right in the corner of the purse. And I was like, oh, what's that? And I opened it up and it says, I own my own home.
Oh, how funny. I love it when things like that happen.
And I was
I
just like, I do own my own home. So it was sort of a little bit in the making. Like it took a few years. But every year I set intentions at the winter solstice because that's new energy. To me, that's the new year. And that's so the winter solstice is the shortest, well, it's shortest day, longest night, isn't it? It's equal.
mm,
And so I always write my intentions for the year ahead. And so I've done things like to be a better person because you want to be a better person every day. You want to be a better version of yourself,
mm,
don't you? You want
mm,
to evolve and grow and but that also means there's probably going to be, depending on where you are in life's journey, you might have to open up an old wound and do some healing. So just because you ask for something, in the greatest good and the best of intention, it might mean that you actually have something to go through to get there, right?
mm.
So I did that, and I leave that one on the list because and I, I'm at a place where I want to give back in my way, and I for example every week, and unless I can't, I put on Facebook I'm going to send absent healing because I'm a healer as well, and so and I'm amazed at how many people
Oh, it's crazy. I
um
see it every week.
you see it.
Yes, I put a couple of names on it myself the other day, and I see it every week when it comes up, and it's a
Yeah,
lot
and
of people.
yeah, it's incredible, and it's when you think there's over 100 people putting a name, but they're not putting one, well, some people put one name or ask for themselves, but on average, some people put up to 10 or more names. So when you think about it, that's hundreds of names being asked for every week for healing. I don't need or want anything for it. I do it because I want to, and that's a part of me wanting to be a better version of myself, just to be a healing vessel for the spirit world and for people in this world. And that brings me a sense of, I suppose, joy or feeling that I'm doing something. And I am amazed by how many are doing it. And I think it's because of that energy of wanting to be a better person and wanting to do something without expectations or that kind of thing. But I've put other things on there, like I did put to travel and work internationally. And, so after COVID, it sort of accelerated, and there are opportunities that have come to me. So I haven't necessarily had to go chasing it down, so to speak. And with the science stuff, I was just saying, I started to have people come for readings, and I'd be like, oh, you're into consciousness, or you're into psychology and consciousness and understanding quantum physics. And they're like, yes, I am. And I'm like, whoa, so am I. So it's almost as though when you radiate something out, if you're doing it with the best of intention, you just radiate it out. You don't have to force it out. Does that make sense?
It
So,
does.
so when I do those intentions at the end of the year, I think very carefully about what they are. And then I have a little ceremony, and then I put them in a little jar, and I forget about it for the year. And then because I trust, I've put that vibration, I've put that energy, I've put that forethought into it. And then I just want to let the universe echo it back to me. Does that make sense? So I've
It
sent
does.
out the thoughts and then let the universe provide. And so I think I put last year something about working with researchers and things, and this year I've started to make some new and interesting connections, which is taking me down that line. So long as you are patient and let the universe provide, then to me that's all about that quantum thing. It's all about like, I'm making the observation that I'm working with more scientists.
I like the fact that you keep it so simple and you have pure belief, because
Mm,
sometimes when I'm going back and thinking, right, I need to do this, I need to get right, I need to put this out, it's almost like I'm lacking in belief by the fact I'm trying too hard. So I think that is a real pearl of wisdom. I
yeah.
wanted to ask, because a lot of people listening to this podcast are wanting to deepen their connection to the
Mm.
spiritual realm. What insights or practices can you give to people wanting to try and deepen their connection to?
Well, I'm glad you
Ah,
asked.
this wasn't a setup, I can assure everyone. This was a totally random question.
Oh, well, I love it. So I would say the most important thing is to go inward. Too many people nowadays are looking outside themselves. So what they tend to do is they're like, who can give me the 10 easy steps? Who can give me
Mm,
the best steps in 3 steps? How can I be a medium overnight? How can I connect with someone in by clicking my fingers and Bob's my uncle, is there. So I think what's happened is, and social media is to blame, really, and here we are on social media.
we are
But
indeed.
what I mean by that is that people once upon a time had a 40-minute attention span, but we're now down to 3 minutes. You look at TikTok and things like that, and it was blog posts. Make sure they can read it in so many minutes. you know, and so people's attention span's gone down and down and down. And then therefore their expectation through social media is, I've sent the email, I want the response. You know, well, sorry, I'm busy doing a reading in my case. I can't respond today. You know, so people's expectations are out of proportion with the reality of the way it works. So anyway, it goes, I would say people need to go inward, and they need to learn to understand their own inner universe. So you need to understand your own power, your own energy, your own vibration. And when you are able to move into that stillness, but yet be aware of its movement and its you know your vibration as that echoes out, then you can start to recognize and identify when the spirit world is there, you know, what is not you. So the reason why I say it's funny you ask is because I've created a free to download 2 versions of an exercise called Inner Universe. And one is more guided than the other. And I suggest using the guided one to begin with. And I've collaborated with Luca Biotti, who is from the Monroe Institute, Italy, and he's an engineer and he's worked in binaural beats and things. So if you do use it, if you do download it, it's perfectly safe. But use headphones because then you won't hear the binaural beats, but they're there and it works better. And it helps to alter the brainwave activity to move you into that relaxed state of mind. So for example, some people are very logical and they find it really hard to meditate, and they fidget and they, you know, can't stop thinking about what
Oh,
they
I'm
want.
one of those. Yes, I fall into that category, I think.
I am too. Or was.
Oh, you
And
must tell us how, in a moment, how did you overcome that? Because I'm sure lots of us are like fidgets, and we struggle.
yeah, so I think for me it was just stopping my logical mind, you know, wanting to be in control, because that's what the logical mind does. So where I am with my understanding of it all now, and that has evolved, and I'm sure it will continue to evolve, is that the logical mind is of the human aspect. You know, if I see it, it's real. If I feel it, it's real. If I touch it, it's real. And what am I having for dinner? And this, and this, and it's like process driven, problem solving, all of those sorts of things. So I have a pretty strong logical mind. But I also have the creative mind, and I also have the ability to be a medium and aware of the other world. So what I did is, or what I learned to do, was to give that aspect of my consciousness that is of the logical mind, that we term the logical, the job of observation. So by giving that part of you that is connected to the ego and connected to the human self and wants to be in charge, if you say you have the job of observing the energy and you need to be quiet and we'll talk about it later, then the logical mind sort of goes, oh, yes, I've got a job to do and I'll do that very well for you, you know? So then that's what unlocked it for me, because I then became much more sensitive and aware to my own energy and my own vibration frequency. And then once I was fully understanding, or almost fully understanding that, I would then go, oh, I'm aware of something that's not mine. And coming into, so it's almost like, if you think about like as dropping a stone into a pond and the ripples that go out, if you think about from the center of your physical being, the ripples echoing out, then of your own power, of your own energy, then when there's something non-physical that's not of you, its ripples cross over yours, shall we say.
Mm.
And that's where I would say, well, we're starting to talk about the wave function now, aren't we? And so then you've got this like interconnection of frequency, and so therefore your logical mind is observing, not interfering. And so then that aspect of your consciousness that deals with the non-physical can kind of be at play. Oh, oh, I know you're a man, and I know this, and I feel that, and so it flows from there. So I don't know that everybody's capable or able to get that, because maybe some people are only going to be able to have the sensitivity at a level of having a spontaneous experience when someone very close to them passes. So I think it's understanding what are your capabilities and what are your limitations. And that's an important thing to understand, so that you're not
How does one go about finding
yeah.
that out in a subject so, I guess I would say complicated, because I think mediumship,
Mm,
although the more I learn about it, it should really be quite simple, because it's just the essence of
yeah.
you sitting down. But actually, it is hard, and I actually think it's getting harder and harder and harder because of this digital world we live in, and the fact that there's just so much resource. Um,
Yeah.
there's a friend of mine who's doing really well actually at developing, and she's just bought one book with one exercise and done that every day, and she's advancing so well. And it just goes to
Mm.
show, you just have to look behind me at the growing collection of books, Penny, and I think that says it all. I really like the way that you describe the process you go through, these ripples and echoes.
Mm.
It does make a lot of sense. How, because you obviously come across students every single course you do, and there's so many people that are coming to
Yeah.
sort of learn from you. How
Mm.
do people work out if they've got a gift for this, or not a gift, but how do people know their limitations and what their
Yeah.
how do they come to know
Well,
that?
so I think I'm glad you said not gift, because
Yes.
I got to think about that.
I have to be very honestly, when I do these podcasts in the evening, have to, which is very unlike me. I have to be very careful in my words, and I do a lot of backtracking for exactly
Yeah,
this
no
reason.
problem. No, look, to me, it's not a gift, it's an ability, let's use the analogy of, let's say, an athlete. We all went to school, and we all had to do PE, right? And it was obvious there were some people that just weren't good at PE, but they still had to do it, and they'd be last round the oval. And then there would be ones that showed some sort of aptitude for speed and endurance and so forth. And so then they may go on to be represent the school at inter-school sports, but then they'll go on, some will drop away, and some will go on to represent their state in or county or whatever it is, and then country, and then we're talking Olympics, right? So there's this, not everyone's going to be an Olympian. Not everyone's going to be a Commonwealth Games champion. Not everyone's going to be a England champion. Not everyone's going to be at whatever level. So if you think about it like that, that there is a through your self-discovery, you're going to find your natural, dare I say, limitation, or ceiling. You're going to find your natural ceiling at which you reach, shall we say. And so that is going to require some form of time and dedication. And that goes back to what I said before. People are looking for, well, how do I do this like by tomorrow? And it's like I've seen people do like weekend workshops and it's almost like they've got their cards printed by the end of the weekend or something, you know. So now maybe for some people they do progress quicker than others, and your perception of your friend is that she is progressing exponentially, and you know, it's almost like, in your words, you feel left behind, right? But I think the most important thing we in all of this is we don't compare ourselves,
I've come to realize that. Yeah.
because your abilities and your aptitude is going to be different to hers. So just because she seems to be excelling in a way that you may admire and don't necessarily feel you possess to her level, but you do possess, then, you know, rather than going, I want to be like her and how come I'm not like her, you want to be going, okay, well, I'm going to keep going and see where this is going to take me, and where my aptitude is. So you know, my experience of you so far is you have this wonderful ability to get a sense of somebody, you know, listening to that introduction that you've done of me, you know, it's, you've got a way of explaining who I am and what I'm about without sort of knowing me deeply as a person. Does that make sense? So
It
you
does,
are
but in a way, I
using
wasn't
your
thinking about
sensitivity
that.
in them. Huh?
In a way, I wasn't thinking about that, but you're right.
Yes, and that's a good thing, because you was probably working, or you would have been working with your sensitivity and your inspiration. So the chances are there's an aspect of you that is connecting in, you're energetically connecting in with me and any other guest that you have. So I don't want to limit it to me, by the way. It's any guest that you have. You're sure you ask them for some details, but then you're moving into a state of an awareness and a centering of your own power, and those words come to you, which really brings the essence of the person you're going to interview to some sort of life before you start interviewing them. Because
Hmm.
when I listened to it, I thought, wow, I mean, some words I'm like, wow. But actually the overarching sort of vibration of what you were saying summed up a lot of who I am and what I'm about. And I thought, oh, I feel you know me beyond the shell of what people think they know about me. Does that make sense, Jason?
It does. I think you hit something on a nail on the head there, because
Mm.
one thing I've noticed is I've built a whole career doing sales, and I've always had this thing where I could walk in a room and I could go, right, I can tell about that person, I can feel about that person,
Yeah.
I'm getting senses of over here, and I do it without thinking. But what I've noticed is, put me in a classroom environment with teacher over there, someone sitting right in front of me looking at me, and in my mind, it just, I feel nothing's coming to me. But what I've noticed is, because I straight away go into ego mode and start
Yeah.
having a meltdown and panicking. And I think you've really made me realize, because when I did that introduction for you, I wasn't really thinking. Well, I wasn't thinking at all. I think that's it.
Yeah, and that's all you need to do is, when you're in a classroom and you've got someone sat in front of you, is you want to look without seeing and you want to hear without listening. So you just want to go into that mode of not really thinking and expressing what you're sensing. And that's when you'll really just take off, because
Mm.
all your years of you know, what you've just described to me tells me you've been using your psychic senses naturally. And in the sales world, you're meeting people all the time. So your sensitivity and non-physical senses are in overdrive. You've been using them naturally for so long. What's happening is, when you go in the classroom environment, you're being asked to think about what you're doing instead of just doing what comes naturally to you.
Mm. You know what? That's so profound, Penny. I will be thinking about that throughout the rest of the evening. Um, I just want to, honestly, I can't believe the time. It's just running away with us, and it's almost been the full hour. What I just want to leave, and I always ask guests this, and I think it does have a habit of putting people on the spot. But I'd like to ask you for some final thoughts or pearls of wisdom that you can offer um, me or the listeners. A closing thought, a final thought.
Don't compare yourself. I'd go back to that one. I would say be on your journey, walk your path. Don't be worried about what somebody else is doing or whether they like you or not, or what their opinion is, and so on and so forth. What you need to do is walk your path with a sense of seeking your truth and with your integrity, and what are your intentions, and this is life, let alone your mediumistic path. you know for example, my intention is to be the best that I can be in that given moment, and to improve from every situation I experience. I'm not perfect, but tell me who is. And by constantly walking in your truth, and not being sidetracked or derailed by other people is an extremely hard thing to do in life, but it's incredibly rewarding if you can. So it's not that you want to bury your head in the sand, and it's not that you want to do any of that, but you want to be your own best critic, be your own, as in be honest with yourself. So that would be my second most important pearl of wisdom. Be honest with yourself. And that is something that people find incredibly difficult to do, because
Mm.
when you're honest with yourself, you have to admit your faults, when you're wrong, when you haven't done as well as you could have. Not to tear yourself down, not to go into that broken record of mum told me I would never be any good kind of thing, but to like, well, what did I learn? What how can I do better next time? And what did I do well? And not from an ego-centered place. It's being honest with yourself. Did you, even if it wasn't the best, did you do your best?
Mm. I think
Does that make
that's
sense, Jason?
it couldn't make sense or be more timely, because only about 2 weeks ago, my partner was saying to me, "You're not honest with yourself." I said, "Yes, I am. Of course, I'm
Ooh.
honest with myself." And he said to me, "No, you're not. You think you are, but you're not." And it made me realise that actually, I'm not honest with myself on some things. I like to kid myself in thinking I'm honest, but it really made me think that I thought I was honest, but actually, there's some things that I'm not honest about with myself.
Yeah, and
Um,
And I think we all do it, right? And so if you can, it's amazing that that's happened, and that shows the coincidence, doesn't it?
it,
Of the synchronicity, and how the
mm,
spirit world, but also the universe can sort of bubble things up as little themes in our life. If there's a theme bubbling up in your life, it's trying to tell you something, and that means you need to be honest with yourself about what it's trying to tell you. If you're pointing fingers in all the other directions, well, they hurt me and they're bullying me and it's not fair this and it's not fair that, then, what's your part in that? Are you letting them? Are you letting it get to you? Are you doing something deliberately or not, to help or hinder that process? And at the end of the day, if we can walk in our truth, be honest with ourselves, and have clear intentions of wanting to do and be the best that we can be, because there are going to be times when we're tired or irritable, or in very much our human emotion, then but can we do better next time, and were we out at our best in that situation. And I've found, I know we're probably running out of time, but
honestly, no, there's no rules here. I could quite happily go for another couple of hours, Penny.
let's do it. But in all honesty, I think that if your intention is for a greater good for yourself and for others, then you're only going to improve. And like I said, nobody's perfect. But I read something recently that said, when we die, we whatever is in our heart or the heart of our soul at that time is where we go to in the spirit world. And I thought, oh, that's a lovely analogy there. And that really sums it up, because everything is frequency. And if we're radiating the best that we can be, yeah, sure, there's always room for improvement in various aspects. But if we're being the best that we can be and we're willing to be honest with ourselves, then we can only evolve and we can only grow. And my, people talk about, well, when you go to the spirit world, you're going to have your life review. Well, I'm reviewing my life every day.
Yes, yes.
And so I want to be the best I can be and be the purest I can be in my heart, or my soul's heart, at the time of my death, so that I can not waste so much time looking back on my physical life when I get to the spirit world, and I can find out how it hangs together, how quantum physics affects this world, and inspire someone in this world to get the answer.
Honestly, this has been the most fascinating conversation. We've discussed everything from quantum effect to manifesting to deepening connection. We couldn't have got more into the hour if we tried. Penny, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. I'm almost disappointed the hour's over.
Well, don't worry. We may be trying to persuade you to come back on. Just to let people know as well, I know Penny mentioned a couple of downloads that she's got out very kindly, that you've created those for the world. I will put the links for those in the show notes, just to let everybody know, because
thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
There
Penny.
we go for another week's edition of the Soul Sync podcast. I absolutely loved that conversation with Penny. And do you know what? I had so much fun. I'm going to try and persuade Penny to come back on to delve into different aspects of mediumship as well, because she's such a great teacher. So a big thank you for joining me this week on the Soul Sync. If you want to stay in the loop with the podcast, it's really easy. Simply hit the follow show button wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. If you want to get involved in the conversation, do check out my Facebook page. The where to go is just in the show notes. And as always, if you have suggestions for future episodes, there might be a guest that you'd love to see me have on the podcast and interview, or you might have a story yourself that you'd like to share with all of the lovely listeners here. So just email me. My email address, again, is in the show notes. It's hello@jasonpaulmedium.com. I hope you have a great week and lots of love. And until next time, goodbye.